tonight, can we get right? Tonight, can we get right?
Hi.
Hi, Wira.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you as well. How are you? Everything's fine there?
Yeah, everything's good. How are you over there?
Yeah, same goes. Just bored working from home.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
am I.
Yeah. Would you guys reopening soon?
I think it depends on the government's social restriction order. If it's extended, then we may have to extend working from home. But if they decide to loosen the restriction, then yeah, we will definitely going back to the office. Should be by next week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we're just trying to, try to stay inspired at home, keeping ourselves busy.
Yeah. I bet. I think there are so many things like when we're stuck and then somehow the creativity just flows in, and I believe that that in the next phase, I guess it's not just a new normal, but I think the way how we approach things in terms of creativity will be much more, much more rich. Like full of
Yep.
full of time.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
apparently, maybe some of us here don't really know you personally since we are also just meet up here right now.
Yep.
Would you be able to introduce us about yourself?
Oh, sure. So name Wira. You could just call me Wira. I've been working in this industry for almost 10 years now, or a little over 10 years. I am the client service manager of Garam. We are based in Kamang, but we also have an office in Jatinegara and Bali. We focused on, we are a brand event agency in the beginning, but right now we are starting to develop a more brand and strategy led sort of firm or design agency. Been working with the sort of different kind of clients, mostly right now, a lot of hospitality, property, residentials, F&Bs. So yeah, that's the really short version of about myself.
I see. So what's your passion actually? Because I think you do some multiple things.
My passion?
Yeah. I mean, why did you go further into this?
Okay. Well, I think that's very hard. I have several passions, I think. Or I don't know if it's called passion or hobbies, but like taking photography,
Yeah.
doing a little video making, that kind of stuff. And I guess, just trying to do creative things. I sort of have this multidisciplinary approach. So I started off as a designer in my college studies, but I eventually figured out that once you do design, the creative field actually doesn't stop only there. So I sort of explore different things. So I guess,
Yeah.
I don't know, the cliche way of saying it is my passion is the pursuit of all things creative.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds like a very colorful journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So I think we'll jump on board on our discussion today. Again, it's about the external side of branding, which I think in this unprecedented time and also the uncertainty that we have, a lot of somehow news, and if you read about marketing reviews and everything, that they would mostly in general, they will try to shift the focus on not to advertise, on not to market themselves out loud, like just be empathetic. And also, but after like a point of 1 month, 2 months time of just a little bit silent about things, I think there's a need for brand to be able to not just reset and also rethink, but there's an approach that also they need to maintain in doing, whether it's in uncertain times. So last week we learned about how internally we can somehow build our values more and how to engage our staff. And today I believe that there's an interesting point of view that you'd like to share with us regarding and how to brand our products or our businesses to outreach our external point of view. Would you mind to share about it? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think you sort of introduced it very well. This is sort of an unprecedented time in our lives. Uh, and I think it's a moment of truth for a lot of brands, not only how they endure this whole process, but also how they'll come out of it eventually. Uh, and there are, I think one of the first thing that we noticed when this whole thing started to unfold is how brands, companies, and people respond to, let's call it an uncertain time. I much prefer to call it as an uncertain time instead of a crisis, but it's sort of the same thing. Uh, and there's, some brands respond to by closing up business. They think they need to do cost saving measures. Some ended up not doing anything. They just waited out.
Yeah.
And I think, there are lessons to be taught here on how you sort of grow and manage your brands. But overall, I think it takes a certain mindset to keep your brands afloat in times of uncertainty, in times of crises. And I think that's something that brand owners sort of need to really understand. I think in the last session, Andrew talked more about internal staff engagement during a time of downturn. So I think this is also something brand owners need to keep in mind, that there are things that they need to do in a downturn, not only internally but also externally.
So yeah, regarding about that, maybe the first thing that we need to set our mind before, like, what do you think, like, the mindset that all these brand owners need to have during this crisis, facing this crisis?
So I think one of the things people ask me is, in times like these, what do I need to do? How do I keep the business alive? How do I keep the brand alive? How do I keep my sales up? Usually I tell them one of the first thing is, in times like these, it's not only about making sure that your sales survive, but making sure that your brand stays alive. Because it's hard to keep sales as good as high as they were in normal conditions, but in times of uncertainty, I think you should shift your focus not towards the sales part, but keeping the brand engagement, helping your audiences, making sure that people are taken care of. So apart from taking measures, of making sure your finances and your operations can keep the business running, tackling your supply chain challenges, there are things that brand owners need to focus on. One of the first thing is, the usual reaction is, if they're unprepared, they usually panic. At times, brand owners, they become angry, sometimes selfish, take decisions that's outside of logic, outside of their strategic planning, and in the end, some even take no actions, as I've mentioned before. But if we look at, if we take a look at how the small and medium enterprises, or UMKM, are dealing with situations like these, we can learn from how to be responsive and resilient over a time of uncertainty. A crisis or times like these is not something new, in my opinion. We've had several different milestones throughout our history where there are economic crises or even social and political crises, like the 97, 98 Asia financial crisis. In 2002, we had the SARS outbreak. In 2008, there was the global crisis. And there's only one constant in all those things, which is there will always be an after. There will be a time where everything sort of return back to normal, sort of say, where people start buying again, they start spending again, they want to engage more with the brand more than a utility basis. And so what that means for brand owners is, now it's not a time to stop reaching out to your audience. So if there is ever a brand who stop marketing when there's an economic crisis, usually those are the brands that don't survive when everything starts returning to normal. So instead of that, why not try to ride the wave of opportunity, exercise your agility, your creativity, to make it through the storm, as they were to say.
Wow, that's very good. Thank you for bringing those up. And I think one side, it is very important to have, like, I mean, as a brand owner or maybe business owner, to have this mindset that just now you elaborately speak of. But also, I think, what about the other side? Like, maybe we can speak much more localized in the market of Indonesia. What do you think, like, how we need to understand all this consumer mindset during their time of confusion?
Mm-hmm. So more on the consumer mindset. I think both brands and consumers, they respond sort of in the same psychological state in a time of uncertainty, in a time of crisis. Usually it starts with confusion, it starts with anger, but then when things start to unfold, it becomes a bit clearer to them. I don't know if you've been following what Airbnb is doing and how they're sort of riding this whole wave of COVID, the whole COVID situation. But Brian Chesky, the CEO, he had a good quote, and I think that reflects not only what it means for companies, but also what it says for consumers, which is a crisis brings you clarity about what is truly important. So that's a statement when he was sort of in a situation where he had to let go of, I think, 25% or more than that of his team. So I think that's a good reflection of the mindset what companies have and what consumers have, which is, it will shift, especially when it has more of an economic and social impact on people's lives. If you follow the news of when the outbreak started to unfold through the mainstream media, you could see that people started panic buying, they start stocking up, they take preventive measures, they start consuming information, looking for credible information to sort of put themselves at ease. And that sort of illustrates where we are at in a psychological state. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I mean, you know how it's a triangle, right? And there's 5 tiers, if I'm not mistaken. So what we're seeing right now is people are gradually shifting downwards the hierarchy of needs, shifting downwards in the tiers. Right now, there are only 3 main things that consumers, in my opinion, see important. One is the physiological needs, basic food, water, clothing, they need good sleep. 2 is safety and security. That's where we talk about, health, employment, making sure they have a roof over their head, family, and also have social stability. And the 3rd is love and belonging, which is, they have connection, they have friendship and intimacy. I think that's where we are at as consumers right now, or in any time of uncertainty. And that's, we could see how brands now are starting to understand that, and it's reflected through their communications.
Nice. So as just now you explained about the Maslow triangle and those 2 tiers, right? And maybe you can give us some insight on how brands can engage to, let's say, the audience that's creating love and relationship. I mean, how do like normal brands that, let's say, they're not a lover, they're not somebody that has emotional point of view, like how do they deliver this and how do they engage with them?
Okay, well, so I think let me get a bit general on that first.
Sure.
Not only for brands who maybe don't have a tone of voice, they talking about intimacy, love, and sort of that kind of personality. In the end, in times like these, the way brands engage with their audiences definitely will change. There are 3 notable changes in what I've seen. One is, in these kind of times, people are seeking care, empathy, sympathy, and generosity. Number two is brands are expected to be sensitive when they respond through their messaging. And number three is there will definitely be a change in how media is consumed. And so brands need to sort of adapt to those changes. Now, with that in mind, so regardless if you had that kind of tone of voice or not, there are ways of communicating that you care and you empathize with your audience, regardless if it's something that you said through words or something you say through your actions. And I think that comes down to it's right now it's more important to engage with your audience through your actions instead of your words. There are a lot of people who take uh, brands who add more, who advertise more than act more. They don't see value in that at the moment because that's not what's important for them. Um, so yeah, I mean, going back to my first point about, right now people are seeking care, empathy, sympathy, and generosity. If do you know kitabisa.com, the crowdfunding platform? I mean, uh, they themselves have seen a spike of donations just within the first few weeks of the COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
There's a lot more donations. I think it was around in the millions of dollars just within like 2-3 weeks time frame.
Really?
Uh, yeah, and in that platform, there's a lot of not only people who are starting these campaigns, who are contributing to that, but also brands who are taking part in those kind of change in those kind of social campaigns. And I think that's one way that brands who doesn't have that sort of tone of voice, how they could empathize more, how they could show more sympathy to their audience is you could start a campaign, you could join a campaign. You just have to be behind cause. So that's one thing. That's one way of seeing it on how these brands can respond. And I think the second part was brands need to be sensitive about their messaging, right? So you don't have to empathize. You don't. I'm sorry. You don't have to have an empathetical tone of voice. You don't have to be sounding all sensitive. But you just have to put yourself in a position that you're not blaming anyone for the situation. You're always being open and transparent about what's going on, not only with the situation but also with your brand. Don't try to be the smart person in the room. Don't think ahead of what the government is saying to us. And you try to capture the feelings of your customers and also your employees through your words in these kind of situations. And if you sort of try to do that, hopefully that should provide a clear guiding principle, not only for your brand externally, but also your brand internally.
That's really good. And well, I think just now you mentioned about the guidance, I mean the principle that somehow brands need to have navigating onto the uncertainty right now. But in in more practical ways, in terms of I'm just curious, how do they excel those principles, but at the same time they will be able to reach out more, but in terms of not just doing whatever the other players in the industry are currently doing. Like, how do they be able to innovate within those principles?
Well, there's a lot of ways brand can innovate. I think right now when we talk about innovation, it's not about taking high high monetary investments, but more on investments that are more sustainable, are more cost effective, and also more long-term goals, long-term oriented. I think
Yeah.
those are sort of the kind of investments that brands need to look into at the moment. I think as a guiding principle of how you you sort of invest your time and energy in this whole situation is you have to invest on making sure people's needs are met at this time. Sometimes it's basic functional needs, sometimes it's emotional needs, whatever it is. A brand needs to reflect that they're there for their audience. They need to invest on mobilizing the assets and communities that they have. Avoid any expensive endorsements, avoid any sort of unneeded expenses. They need to invest on adding value by being genuine, assessing the situation, and making sure that nothing that they do is counterproductive. And I think I mentioned before, they should not invest in ads, but they should invest in acts, because right now, meaningful contributions, it's much more important for your audience in the long term than doing major ads that only provides you short-term results.
Yes.
They want to make sure you invest in commitment and making a difference, because I think a lot of brands actually say they want to make a difference, but I think this is really a time where you need to show that you are trying to make a difference, and make sure that you invest in your brand. Make sure that whatever you do, it reflects on who you are as a brand. Make sure that your purpose is elevated. Make sure that your personality remains strong. Make sure that consistency is managed. So after this whole thing, hopefully with all that investment, people will remember you on top of the other brands.
Mm. Mm. So it is very important, is it, that somehow whatever that we're doing, I mean, the actions that brands or business owners are portraying right now has to be somehow maybe like connected, like somehow they have to shift those lines again after all these things gonna be done and clear. Because like you said just now, if people came up from this and they don't really remember like how do you stand with them during this crisis, then it's gonna be challenging that they will compete. Yeah. And very interesting that you mentioned about making a difference, because I think even in Higher Purpose, we believe that brands are different for a difference. And sometimes I think you know, right? I mean, Indonesia, in terms of how SME and maybe the medium enterprise would definitely think much more into the selling parts. While right now, I don't think that can work as instant as fast that they can do. I mean, in terms of selling and driving sales. And speaking of making a difference, the end goal is about transformation. And there will not be a transformation if the brands or even the brand owners itself doesn't have a change. I think, can I just call it like a change maker mindset, during this hour. So, how do you think that brands should transform themselves first before they can drive a new transformation in the world?
I think if we're talking about transformation, I think one of the things that a brand needs to do is to reflect on themselves in the time. I mean, I think one of the positive output of this whole situation is us more time, in my opinion. It sort of slows things down for us, and it's sort of thing right now to really enjoy this whole slowdown period, to reflect on not only your life, not only what's important, but also reflect on what you see yourself doing in the next few years moving forward. So, if we talk about transformation, there's a lot of things that brands can do and sort of look into. And I think it's start looking into themselves and figuring out who they are, and have they changed throughout their operations? Have they changed throughout their lifespan? Um, there's a lot of ways that you could do that. There's a lot of angles that you could do that. You could look into, are you targeting the right customers? Are you looking into the right market? Are you giving the right mix of products and services to your audiences? And are you staying true you believe in? Is that message being communicated across clearly or not? I think those are sort of the reflection points that brand need to go through in order to have a change mindset or a transformation sort of mindset. And right now, I think it's a perfect time to do it. Brands transform at this time. I think they should sort of look into opportunities, not really transforming themselves at this time. They should look into where they want to be in the next few years, and I guess that would be a roadmap to their transformation. But yeah, I think it just starts with just looking deep into yourself and really who you are today, where you want to take yourself in the next few years, and how to get there.
Yeah, like just now you mentioned that one of the ways is to elevate brand purpose, right? So let's say they have already set their brand purpose somehow, and then looking at this situation, they come back to that, and somehow it doesn't really resonate. I mean, that don't really resonate in terms of suddenly they realize that, oh, this is not the right purpose that we should have. So what do you think, like how do, let's say, just in terms of purpose itself, how do brands can somehow recalibrate again their purpose in these uncertain times?
I see. Well, I think if that's the situation, the question is, why is the brand purpose not not perfect? It's not perfect for their situation. It's either because communicated well, or it's not easily understood or reflected to their audiences through their communications and actions, or maybe it was just too high of odds that they themselves don't believe or are able to sort of manifest it. And I think those are the first two questions that they need to figure out. I mean, if it's sort of not being able to communicate it well or express it well to your audiences, then what they need to do is sort of recalibrate their communications efforts. Rethinking their campaign, rethinking the channels they use, rethinking the choice of people and words they use in their communications, and see which of the past efforts that they've done resonates well, and sort of try to replicate that in their future communications. But if it's a matter of their purpose is not something that they believe in the end, or it's not something that is easily comprehended, not only for the brand owners but also to their team, I think in that situation, then you sort of need to go through a re-strategizing of your brand. You try to revisit yourself internally by reflecting on what externals are saying about your brand, and then from there you do the whole branding exercise. Rethink how you want to position yourself, who are you targeting, which of the audiences do you want to prioritize, how does your audience think. From that, you sort of come to a new conclusion on what your brand purpose is. Sometimes I've seen cases where why this kind of thing happens is it's not a matter of the brand itself, but it's a matter of who they were aiming. So they weren't actually targeting the right customers. And oftentimes it's not about that they were not targeting the right customers. They were trying to target every customer. And we have a saying at Ecus, which is, if you try to be everything for everyone, then you become nothing for nobody. And that's, sort of one of the common misguided practices, in my opinion, when it comes to managing your brand and making sure that your purpose is reflected well and clear enough so that it becomes a rallying point, and it becomes a cause for people to join your tribe.
Yeah, that's very true. And before I think we continue, I think we kind of discussed such a very broad, I mean, in terms of this focus point, but I just want to encourage everyone that's tuning in, like, if you guys have question for Wira here, please feel free to adjust your question in the comment bar or the icon next to it, because I think it's one of the time where Wira can definitely go directly to your question and answer it live. But yeah,
Yeah.
so regarding of okay, if I just want to be honest here, like I think all the things that we need to cover is already covered, but I think I'm wondering, and I'm very curious because at this point of time, I believe that the reach that we need to somehow open and be adaptable is towards shifting things into digital, right? So I just want to connect things there. If let's say you are bound to make a difference, even with the smallest impact possible that we can do, even through digital platform, do you have any practical ways, or maybe like one of the example of brands that they are doing? Just now you mentioned about Airbnb, and you also mentioned about kitabisa.com. Is there any other commercial brands that you see, even though they're maybe from their outward appearance, they don't seem like a brand that cares so much for humanity, but right now, because these things, they suddenly somehow shifting slowly and slowly towards caring for the society.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first point we need to address is it's true that in situations like this, especially now, with the digital landscape is sort of more evolved than it was maybe a decade. A lot of brands take to digital in engaging with their audiences, and some are doing exceptional jobs, in my opinion, on making sure that sort of in line with where the consumers at. Okay, so what I was saying, I think right now, how if we're gonna take if we're gonna utilize digital, I think it's best that we not only be responsible, but we also need to be smart about utilizing it. Because if we talk about the digital landscape, everyone has access to it. Everyone can be a creator, but
Yeah.
but not a lot of people are actually utilizing that one for the greater good, or they're not utilizing that in the best opportunity as possible. And we talk about digital, we have video content, we talk interactive content. I think, first of all, don't into the gimmicks. Don't be sucked into that. Oh, we need to do video. We need to do contents. I think it has to first and foremost be a reflection of your brand. So it has to prove to what your brand wants to convey. And then, if you have a guiding principle, then you break it down to the content creation. So if you about sort of examples, I think the general examples of it is a lot of brands, they don't actually need to utilize these digital channels to convey a message of change or being sympathetic, but they're just trying to keep people in a positive spirit. They just are there to uplift their spirit. Some of which, they do online concerts, they provide classes, they provide trainings, they provide comedic contents. In terms of what I've seen, so I'm sort of really inspired by what Nihi in Zumba is doing. I don't know if I'm sure you know.
I know that brand.
Yeah, Chris, the resort by Chris Birch. I think, as a hospitality brand, I'm sure they are very much impacted. I think one of the top three industries, hospitality and definitely up there. But even though that's the case for them, one of the first things they didn't try to save themselves first, instead of try to save their community. I think that was the first thing that they did. So
Yeah.
what I was saying is, Nihi Sumba, they think about what the community needs first, other than what they need to do to survive, to maintain their business. So they actually, when this whole COVID thing started to unfold, one of the first thing they did was have a fundraiser, because the COVID not only impacted their business, but also impacted the thousands of people within their community, not only
Yeah.
their employees, but also the surrounding people who are, sort of putting their life on the hand of tourism. Um, so they started this fundraiser to get people to donate, on the emergency situation in Sumba. Um, and that, and to get people to drive to that cause, they gave they provided content, they provided, a lot of information to make sure people are aware of the situation. But then moving forward from that, that's where they began to start, really utilizing their digital channels to support their cause or support, their brand purpose. And, they were, I think, sort of the first, to sort of initiated what I refer to as digital tourism. So
Mm.
they sort of give you a sneak peek into Zumba through a lot of different, live sessions. They call it, I think, Nihi Zumba at home. So it's like, either a live broadcast, or they publish new videos. And in those sessions, they, not only try to make people feel positive about themselves, they try to make sure that people live a healthy lifestyle. They try to also, communicate their, positive causes in their videos. Yeah, I think it's not a way to, for them to, uh, uh, only maintain, an audience or generate, just a way to really be true to their brand purpose, and also, making sure that they're heard, that way when this whole thing, they're gonna try to be remembered, as, one of the.
Yeah, that's really a good example though. I last time I jumped onto their live session as well, and I think they really done it well and very creative. And I think that's one way on how to be able to deliver a brand experience towards the customer through
Yeah,
digital.
exactly.
Yeah, and maybe we can touch on that a little bit. Like, I think purpose is always become the fundamental thing when you try to come up with new marketing, with new strategies, for your positioning. And it's always, purpose is always outreaching and far-reaching. And regarding about experience, do you have some like principle or maybe frameworks on how to craft brand experience that is adaptable right now into our situation?
Um, so yeah, I think when it comes to experience, um, in a situation like this, uh, it's a, brands are being tested, to see if they're creative and resilient enough to, survive a situation of uncertainty. Uh, Now, what the best guiding principle I could give to, brand owners, quite a few. I think first, for one of the first are, what we've talked about previously is, reflect and realign yourself with your purpose, or sometimes, we call it your values, and how you differentiate from your, amongst the other players in your industry. It's the guiding principle is you have to think about what worked and what didn't work, then you sort of re-strategizing, and then start investing your time and energy moving forward, to your brand thinking, sort of mind state. And then the second, principle, at a time like this, you have to use the law to sort of explore and discover. And there's a lot of things that you could sort of explore and discover, sort of at low cost. You could sort of experiment on new ways of delivering products, new ways of delivering your services. Maybe do a redesign of your packaging, restructure your communications efforts, that kind of stuff. So the second one is use the lull to explore and discover. I think the third guiding principle that we like to share with brand owners is right now you have to sort of maximize and utilize the existing customers that you have, because I think they are the power that you could really rely on. And I think during Ramadan is a perfect time to sort of see how that unfolded. I don't know if you were aware also, in at least in my Instagram feed, in the circle of friends that I have, in the whole Ramadan period, people were sharing their that brand sent them or their friends sent them, and it had like personal messages. It was packaged in a very pretty and neat way. And you know, brands sometimes also say thank you by reposting their followers' post, or maybe even doing these kind of session with their customers. And that's sort of one of the ways, you know, we could see that brands are starting to utilize their existing customers, because they understand the power that these customers have. And especially nowadays, any negative feedback that you get is going to be published online and it's going to stay there forever. So you might as well make sure you maintain the customer base you have. And then the fourth one is, you know, you have to sort of agile about the whole situation. So you have to build sort of a more responsive communication model. Right now, digital is that platform. But what I could say to the brand is, don't focus on long-term campaigns, because we don't know yet where this situation is going to lead up to. Just think about either something very ad hoc or something very short-term. But nevertheless, don't stop your marketing communications effort. Don't stop engaging and reaching out to your audience. And the fifth one is, you know, I think the sustainable model right now is collaborate and pay it forward. Like example, what we're doing right now, I consider it collaborations. A lot of brands need to be more open to collaborations and paying it forward. We've seen it in its early stage during this whole COVID virus, how local clothing brands are sort of teaming up to provide safety wear for the medical team. And now we're seeing a lot more collaborations among brands. You know, like there are FNBs already collaborating with clothing brands to provide masks. There are FNBs collaborating with other FNBs to sort of complement each other's products. I think the last part I said was, you know, the collaborate and pay forward. That would be one of the things really looking to moving forward.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's not just like us as in-person human being needs to stand together during crisis, but I believe that businesses and brands that would be able to open themselves, not in terms of to compete, but also to collaboratively, like you said, coming
exactly.
up with solution or maybe things that they can somehow, even like just to entertain people, I think is necessary.
Exactly. I think as long as you remain sensitive to the message, as long as you remain empathic and sympathetic to your audiences, in my opinion, can do no harm or damage as long as you responded, you know, in line with the norms and the sensitivity of the issues. People are, I see, more appreciative towards any kind of support, any kind of initiative or positive initiative that brands and people and other parties may put in front of them. So it's really a good time for, you know, brands to really capture that opportunity. Don't stop engaging.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one of the local brand, which is Florist, I forgot the name of the brand though, but they're local and I think they're not really established for a while, so they're pretty new. And I believe that new businesses that start up this 2020 will be very challenging because these things unexpected. So what they do eventually is very unique and interesting, and I think even it's a small actions, but somehow, at this during this time, like consumers, I believe, are trying to equip themselves in terms of whether it's educational skill or maybe crafty skill, different type of variative skill sets that maybe they want to improve, and that florist especially, maybe this time, like people will only send flowers only for birthday people, and like you
Mm-hmm.
say, Ramadan, those
Mm-hmm.
important occasions that they try to celebrate other people's lives during the crisis. But one thing that they innovate and they do is like they come up with this idea on how to engage their audience to craft, let's say, a flower arrangement, like how they can come up with a creative ways. And let's say they just compile everything, let's say, in a box, and they give you
Mm-hmm.
the tools like blank card, well designed, let's say, and also the flowers, tiny bits of flowers, but it's all dried up, and they just
Mm-hmm.
compile it on the box. And then they do have some, like if you do bouquet flower, you have those clothing, not clothing, the what do you say, the cloth itself. Yeah,
Yep.
those
The
things
wrap.
are actually not for you to somehow to craft the bouquet itself, but what they do is like you can frame it, so somehow you can put it on your card, and then you can rearrange the flowers like the way how you want it, and then put some of the clothes as if that it's a bouquet, like it can
Yep.
be a very artistic craft skill. And I think even me just showing them, showing that, sorry, even me just looking at how they come up with this idea, I am intrigued and interested to try that out. I think because it's
Yeah.
something fun.
Yeah.
Rather than just sending flowers for your friends, I think if you create those dry flowers and send it over, it will be much more meaningful.
It will be, yeah. I think that's reflective not only for your case, but in every other case. People now really buy into the content that they see. It's either that they start immediately. You know how sometimes people start to procrastinate if they see something new. They feel like, oh, I'm gonna do this, but later. But now that we're at home more, if we see something, then we want to do it immediately, or we want to immediately. And I think that is sort of one of the fascinating things that I see right now that's happening. So, I think that's a positive situation for brand owners. People are really responsive right now, right?
Yeah, that's true. So I believe that it is very possible. It is very possible for brands to still deliver the experiences through online or
Yeah.
maybe physical, because there's no limit. Maybe those florists doesn't even expect that they will do like this kind of DIY bouquet at your home, and maybe it's gonna be a hit like in the future business of their you know of their
Yep.
offers.
When Yeah, in the future.
Yeah. So awesome. I think I don't know if you want to add anything, but it's already 8:50, almost 55, and I think it's gonna
Wow.
end like maybe 5 more minutes.
Oh wow.
It's
Time
very
flies.
fast, right? I know.
Yeah, it's very.
I mean, talking about brands, I don't think like we can limit like only for 1 hour. But Wirawan, thank you so much. Maybe one
That's
last
true.
thing, you can summarize the whole thing, or maybe just another one last tip that you want to give us.
Well, I think I'll just close it. Regardless of any crisis, as brand owners and as consumers, we just have to be ready because regardless of when it's going to be, there will be an after, and that's the only constant. As brand owners, use this to really look into yourself, reflect and realign your purpose and your values. Use it as a time to explore and discover, maximize your existing customer base, shift your communications to something that's a bit more rapid responsive than long-term campaigning, and collaborate, pay it forward. I guess that's the way that those are just some of the ways we could try to survive and make it through the storm.
Awesome. All right, I think we're gonna end it here. And
Cool.
despite there's a question, I think you're really doing really great then. I mean, everything's clear.
Okay, cool. Hopefully
Yeah,
I
okay,
answered the
Wirawan.
questions that may.
Yeah. Have a great day then at work, and hope
You
after
too.
all this pandemic is over, then we can meet up for coffee and with Andrew maybe when he's in Jakarta.
Yeah,
too.
definitely. I will
Sure.
definitely give a call when we are able to sort of meet face to face.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Vira, again for your time.
Thanks, Santiani. Thanks everyone. Thanks for having me.
Miss you,
Have a good day.
baby, can we get right tonight? Can we get right tonight? Can we get right?